welcome. I'm going to start by asking you your name, and then if you tell me a little bit about your connection to Savannah or growing up Jewish in the South. And you can start as far back as you want with your relatives, and we'll move forward from there. And at the point at which you are no longer chit-chatting, I'll ask you a couple of questions, and it'll take about 15-20 minutes.
Okay.
Right.
My name is Eunice Bernstein. I was raised in different parts of the South. I was born in Augusta. My parents lived in Hazelhurst, Georgia, and they met in New York. Let's see. The reason I'm relating this is it's sort of a personal story. Since my father was the only Jewish merchant in this very small town of Hazelhurst, he did dry goods, and my mother was, a homemaker, whatever. He was coerced or coaxed to enroll me in Sunday school in a Christian church. So I went to Sunday school. This was hard for my mother because she was raised Orthodox. But she sort of, I guess, went along with it because he was in a hard situation. And she just told me, she says, whenever they say Jesus, just don't say it out loud. So I remember that. That's a very concrete memory bank. So I did that. I don't think I did it long. I think I did it for several months. And while we were living in Hazelhurst, which was the first 5 years of my life, they gave me a Christmas tree. Not my parents, but the neighbors, because they felt sorry for me, I guess, because I was Jewish and, I had no other kids to play with or whatever. Not kids to play with, but, to go to Sunday school with. So they gave me a Christmas tree, they gave me a doll, they gave me presents, and I remember that. We never had it after that, but that was the first year. And they also gave me a big Easter bunny and a big Easter basket full of goodies and, candy and toys. So I thought this was wonderful. So I never had that again either. Unfortunately for my father, his dry goods store kind of got kicked out by the 5 and 10. So we went on to other parts, and we were in Waycross. And I did go to Sunday school at I don't know if it was a temple or a congregation. There wasn't a rabbi, but it was a small Jewish thing. But I need to digress, because while we were in Hazelhurst, there were a couple of families in Baxley that were only like 17 miles away. So we would go and be with each other, Jewish people together. And so my father has some very good friends in Baxley. They were also merchants. So they all got together. They either played poker, or they had dinners, or sometimes they would have seders together. So do you want me to say names?
You can say names.
Well, he was friendly with the Hirsches. I think it was Saul and Edith Hirsch, and they had a daughter named Riette. And also the Finkelsteins, it was Nathan and Sarah Finkelstein, and they had a daughter, Marcia, who was my age, and we played together. So I remember fondly that we always used to go to Baxley, or the Baxley people used to always come to us. But there were all small southern towns that had 1 or 2 Jewish merchants, and they would all kind of congregate sometimes and play poker or, celebrate. So it was a nice socialization, because they didn't get out of the town until the weekends and stuff like that. So I do remember that well.
I've heard the story of the Jewish merchant a couple of different ways from a different perspective. Why do you think it was that Jews of your parents' era seemed to, or your grandparents' era seemed to gravitate towards certain types of businesses? And how is it they would settle in a place that was so, maybe not necessarily unfriendly to
Remote.
Jewish, but certainly, right, remote is a good word, but certainly did not have a Jewish support system?
Well, my father grew up, he was born in New York, but he grew up in Reedsville. And he had 5 brothers and a sister. And I remember him telling me that, they used to get fights with the other boys who would taunt them because they were Jewish. But, he grew up there, and he was a Southern boy, had a Southern accent, and then met my mother up in New York. And I don't know how they came to Hazelhurst. I guess he thought it was prime time, you know, opportunity. They didn't have a dry goods store, so he opened a dry goods store. And I think that's how they settled in Hazel. Or they knew somebody, like he knew the Hirsches and he knew the Finkel. And they said, well, maybe you should go to Hazelhurst, and, you know, because 2 of them were in Baxley. Who knows? That part I don't know, because my parents.
So it's like opening up a new territory for the
I
mercantile
think
business.
so. I
it
think
was
that's probably what he
The
did.
Slogan family were wholesalers. And these were their retailers.
and these were their retailers.
So they probably gave him an idea to go
To go
locate
to the
there,
territory.
because they would supply them with merchandise. So that's what I remember about Hazelhurst. I remember going to Waycross and finally going to a so-called temple or Jewish, you know, and going to Sunday school there. And just, I
Was it an
remember-
odd experience for you when you finally went and saw what organized religion was like?
It wasn't, I was young, so I don't have real, I just remember going to Sunday school. I remember they had, you know, dinners, whether they were seders or what, but I remember going to that. I don't remember them taking me for services.
There are all types of sacrifices that parents go through for their children. Would you consider moving to a town where there are no other Jews or very few Jews, or a type of sacrifice?
I don't know that it was a sacrifice. I think they had friends other than just their Jewish friends, and he was very into the community, and I don't think they were unhappy. I just think it was a business thing, because he sort of got pushed out by this particular chain. But he had grown up in a small southern town almost all his life, so
Besides
to
growing,
him that wasn't strange or or different. So.
besides being around people who were just ignorant of what a Jew was, and you know, hence the Christmas tree story. Do you remember any signs of overt anti-Semitism growing up?
Not there. I was too young. And I remember when I was in Waycross, when my mother started me there, it was toward the end of the 2nd grade when we were in Waycross. And I remember the teacher, and it was Alice Street School, and she saw me at the door and she introduced me, and the first thing she did was introduce me to the only other Jewish child that was in the 2nd grade. Oh, this is, I think it was Jerry Yomofsky. And she says, I want to introduce you. He's Jewish too. So she made a point of connecting me with somebody else that was Jewish. And, you know, it was just odd. I felt very odd at that point, and she did that.
Many of the Jewish institutions had ways for young adults to meet each other through dances or conventions where they would go around to different places. Did you ever participate in any formal dances or organizations that helped group Jewish children together?
Well, we moved. So we moved to Brunswick. When we got to Brunswick, we had a temple. It was Reform, and I have very good experience there because it was a tight-knit group, not a lot of Jewish kids, but we were part of TYG. And when we were little, my brother and I used to do plays. We were the mavens of Hanukkah plays and Purim plays, and I remember my mother made this gorgeous purple robe for me to be in this play so I could be Queen Esther. So I do remember that vividly. So we did that, and I taught Sunday school when I got older as a preteen. So I did the nursery group, and then I did a slightly older 8 or 9-year-old group when I was about 13, 14. But I'm coming around to this other theory. They did not have a rabbi at the temple. It was kind of small, and they would do visiting rabbis or student rabbis. And my mother invited one to dinner one night, and somehow or another he got a hold of her or whispered in her ear and decided that I could do a bas mitzvah. And my mother just latched on to that idea, and he started tutoring me this and you know, in Hebrew and everything. And then he left after about a couple of months, and then we got a permanent rabbi at that point, Rabbi Schultz, who also, and I think it's because my mother decided that she had this probably guilty feelings of letting me go to Sunday school, you know, at a ripe age of 4 or whatever it was. And I think this was her way of kind of compensating for us. So she wanted me bas mitzvahed, And I was the first bar mitzvah in Brunswick, Georgia at that temple.
Was it unusual at the time,
Yeah.
not only there, but in general, for girls to be bas mitzvah?
I think it was happening. I think it started to happen, but it's such a small community there, and nobody had ever done it. And so I got to be the first.
So, who were your guests at your bat mitzvah? Were they all
Probably
Jewish
all my-
people or everyone you knew?
Probably the whole congregation came out because it was an event, because nobody had seen that before, and all my relatives. And but I had a lot of non-Jewish friends, because there aren't that many in Brunswick, Georgia. So my Y team group came out to see this. It was very interesting. They found it.
Were there
interesting.
bar mitzvahs being conducted around
Yes,
the same time?
yes,
Was there confirmation?
yes. I was confirmed too.
So tell me a little bit about your confirmation experience.
I was 15, and I read from the Torah again, because I was pretty, I guess, good at it by then. And, there was about 5 of us that got confirmed.
Throughout your life, have you continued Torah studies or
No.
the ability to read Torah?
No.
So what do those experiences mean to you, if you can remember? And looking back, what do they mean to you today that you hit those milestones?
Well, because I think it was important, and it gave me confidence in myself to stand up in front of a group of people. I'd never done that before. And it did tie me to religion, but unfortunately, my mother passed away very quickly, and I think that colored my world in a way that I just didn't go back as fast, if that makes any sense. So, no, but we were very tight, very involved in that temple, and it was a happy experience. It really was.
I have people who sit and tell me that they did this for the temple, or their parents were leaders in the synagogue, or founders of this, or, were sisterhood president. And then they tell me that they're not religious. What do you think it means to be religious in a Jewish sense?
I think it means that you embrace it and you want to study Torah, or want to know a deeper meaning of it, but not everybody has the capabilities or the inclination to do that. A lot of people have become Jewish because it's a social endeavor and it's a community endeavor, so they like the socialization, they like the holidays, they like that. But I did get a little more immersed in that. But I went to congregations when I was in college, but like I said, my mother passed away very quickly, and I just I guess was not happy.
There's an old adage, you learn one, do one, teach one, and you've already talked about not only were you bat mitzvah, but you were confirmed, and then you were a Sunday school teacher.
Mhm.
Yes. In Judaism, it's not essential that people get a formal education, but there is something about tradition that holds us together as a people. Can you talk a little bit about the traditions you grew up with that you passed on to your own family?
Well, I mean, my parents worked hard and they didn't actively participate. My mother was in sister of it and tried to do some of that. But she had just retired, unfortunately, and after she retired, she passed away. So she was intending on becoming more, active at that point. So I can't really tell you anything else that was passed on, except they thought it was important that we go to temple on a fairly regular, not, every weekend or every week, but we tried. And, I tried to instill some of that into my son, but I wasn't a good example. So.
Tell me about coming to Savannah, getting married, and raising a child in Savannah.
It was all happy. Pretty much, yeah. I've been married 42 years. And,
Did you meet in college?
No, we met right after I graduated. So he's a lot older, somewhat older anyway. And we married and moved to Savannah, and that's it, pretty much. I've stayed here ever since. And Joshua was born, and Joshua went to Sunday school, Hebrew community, so I did instill that. I wanted him to go to community Hebrew school and part of the Phoebe Jacob, and he was bar mitzvahed, and so he's, and he is Jewish in his heart. I mean, I think he is that. But now he's grown, he's in Atlanta, and he's just got married, so we'll see how the story unfolds from there and how much he carries on.
You've talked about quite a few different Jewish institutions. Everything from a Reform to a conservative to an Orthodox synagogue to belonging to a Reform youth group. Do you get something from institutional Judaism that maybe was lacking in a less formal Jewish tradition? Or is there a significant difference between what you've come away with from the different branches of Judaism?
I think because it was Brunswick and it was looser, and it was a lot of Jews were assimilated into the community. There wasn't this very rigid Jewish identification in Brunswick, Georgia. I mean, but there were a lot of merchants and lawyers or whatever. But you didn't feel quite as segmented as you do here, where you have three distinct groups. Everybody was together, whether they were more Orthodox in their beliefs or more Reformed. They all got together because there was only one place to go.
Do you have JEA memories?
None.
Okay.
We never went to we lived in Brunswick. We never went to JEA.
All right. But once you moved to Savannah, did you participate with your child at the JEA?
We participated, yeah. He was in morning school and preschool and nursery school, and what did he do? Morning music, something. He did some music thing. So yeah, it was happy. I did some exercise classes. I did whatever, but they don't have enough for young adults or even middle-aged adults. They really have a lack of activities. It's either for young children, preschool, community school, whatever's involved at the JEA, and then they go on to somebody who's retired. So I think that's a definite lack.
What's your best Savannah memory?
That's a toughie. Having my child born, that's probably ace. And I don't know. What else is a good memory? His bar mitzvah, that was a wonderful memory. He did a great job. Trying to think what else. Just being in Savannah is a whole unique experience in and of itself. And coming from Atlanta, where I was living, to Savannah, it's a more cloistered world. But now that I'm older, I'm enjoying it because it's a cloistered world. I'm not fighting traffic as much as if I was in Atlanta or just getting somewhere. It's a nice existence here. It really is.
Do you think Savannah as a city affords you a full life? And why do you think that was not an option for your child?
You mean?
Why didn't he move here?
Well, he went to University of Georgia, and he started doing advertising, and he started doing technical work, digital work, mostly digital advertising. So he got into it there. He had a good employer, and they were, very good to him. So he stayed in Atlanta, and he was happy. And he loved sports, football, baseball, University of Georgia football. So Atlanta is the place for him. There's not here. There's not that environment here. So he likes the big city.
I didn't ask you any of the historic questions about the civil rights movement or the relationship that maybe your parents had to people in your smaller southern communities, to people who were not white. Being Jewish was one thing, but not being white was certainly something else. Do you have any memories, good or bad, of race relations in any of the places that you lived in?
Well, when we were in Brunswick, I remember going into the Woolworth, and they were having a sit-in. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I realized all these black people were sitting on stools. And they looked at me and I looked at them, and I sort of just slowly backed out of Woolworths because I had a feeling I wasn't supposed to be there. So that's the only experience I remember. And then, of course, it was in the newspapers that they were having a sit-in.
What year was that?
Oh, gosh, you had to ask me that. I'm terrible with dates. I would
Right.
think it was 63
63.
or 64. I don't, it was before, I think that's the right year.
You said you got a feeling that you weren't supposed to be there. Did you get a feeling that this was history being made? Or did you not put any significance
I knew
to
it was significant. And my mother was fairly liberal. She never used derogatory terms, with the N word ever was spoken in my house. Never done.
Did your father's store serve all people in the community?
I'm sure it did, yeah.
I mean, if you had one thing that you could change about the way you grew up, as it relates to being a Jewish woman now, is there something that you would have changed?
I think if they had been more stable, it would have helped me. But we moved a lot. I went to a lot of elementary schools within 6 years. So I think I was always the new kid on the block kind of thing. So it was hard for me because as soon as I got comfortable with a group of friends, we'd move to another.
Besides making sure that your son had his bar mitzvah, is there something about your role as a Jewish mother that you cherish more than anything else?
I don't know. There's something. I just think that a Jewish mother is not that different from any other mother. Is that you try to instill more things in them. You always talk to them about being Jewish. And he was a good kid. He was easy. So I don't know of anything that stands out more because I'm Jewish or not. But he was raised to know right and wrong, and good from bad, and what kids do. And it's interesting because even though we weren't overt, he always felt it was important to marry somebody Jewish too. Okay, and that's a good thing.
Is there anything we didn't talk about that you'd like somebody seeing this in the future to know?
I don't know. I'm terrible. Some people can remember dates and places and events and names, and I have a hard time with that. I'm trying to think.
More important than that is how you felt about growing up Jewish, if it was like
I think I
wearing
assimilated.
skin.
I think I assimilated, especially in small southern towns. I tried to keep my profile low because I was one of very few Jewish kids in the block, and so it became an outstanding kind of thing, and sometimes it wasn't for the good. Sometimes people make comments. I don't remember anything anti-Semitic overtly, but I know there were probably incidents where they said something to me that was inappropriate. Not bad name-calling kind of inappropriate, but questions like maybe somebody asked me if I had horns. That sort of, dumb, really being dumb, kind of question. But that's all I remember. But I did sublimate, if that's what you're saying, my Jewishness.
Is there something about those types of experiences that help you better relate to other people who are different or other minorities?
Yeah, I think so. I think it does color your world, that other people are, have similar problems, maybe because of their skin color more than anything else, rather than just religion. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. That was a good interview.
You
Are we
know,
good?
That was nice.
Okay. Go ahead. You were talking about how religion sometimes is more than just exterior and that it's actually a part of you.
Well, I think sometimes some people find comfort, being part of a ritual and doing it over and over again. They find that comforting, or they get immersed in it, and I do think that sometimes it's your DNA. Some people really, are more prone to that and gravitate toward it, and other people go, no, that's too much for me. I don't like all that formal stuff. I just, I'm spiritual, but I don't want to go there and worship in that formalized way. So I do think it's sometimes the DNA thing.